already began, so we can cut it, okay? Anytime.
All right.
Yeah.
So your first question is, what is Mecha?
What is MECHA? MECHA stands for Movimiento Estudiantil Chicanos de Aztlán. And MECHA is an organization that encourages students to be active in political activities and also in terms of community activities on campus and off.
Awesome. Okay, and then how did Mecha get started?
Well, I'll tell from my experience, so you can just know from one person's point of view, and then you can go to the history books, go to Occupied America to get the exact history. But it started in the late 60s, and it emerged out of UMAS, which was a formerly, the organization that represented Chicana students on campus. UMAS was United Mexican American Students. But when I arrived at Cal State LA in late 1968, people were questioning just this term, Mexican American, and it was at that moment that, students decided that we wanted to identify as Chicanas and Chicanos rather than Mexican American, hyphenated American, and rename and state that we are Chicanas and Chicanos with a political purpose. So we weren't simply hyphenated Americans.
Awesome. Why was it necessary at the time?
A little bit. Roger, just higher,
bit
that's
higher?
why. Little higher, yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Why was it necessary at the time?
Why was it necessary?
Yeah.
Well, I would say that things have changed since then, but some things continue to be issues because we were facing police brutality, low levels of educational attainment, much fewer Latinos and Latinas in college settings. The whole issue of immigration was still an issue, which it is today. So all those issues were facing the Chicano community, and we felt that we needed to do something about it.
And then why has it been successful for many years? Like why is Mecha still in 2016?
I think because those issues continue, because even though we have moved forward, it's like that old saying, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So if we don't continue to struggle, the conditions won't change. And so we've had some advances, definitely things like the EOP program. And when I started at Cal State LA, that was just being started. And the Educational Opportunity Program was one of the first programs that brought more Latino students, working class Latino students, on campus and provided them with the support services that they needed to be successful in college.
Thank you. All right, and then your questions?
Okay. You mentioned earlier how you got involved into Mecha. So I wanted to ask you, my follow-up question would be, patriarchy being a thing in the Latino culture, was there any sexism within the organization, or was it mostly external when you joined?
I think all organizations will reflect the conditions of the surrounding society, right? So because we live in a sexist society, organizations are going to be permeated with it, and we always have to struggle against it. When I joined Mecha, actually it was a group of, with some of the guys. I attended a meeting and they were planning a camp-in for EOP, and we were just sitting there kind of like very unaware, not knowing what it was all about, but they said, hey, we're going to have a camp-in at Cal State LA. We need someone to organize an education day and someone make signs and get speakers. And so we ended up kind of being drawn into the organization through the activity by a young man. And I think at that time there weren't many women in leadership positions. There were women involved, but the difference I think between then and now is that women, at least at Cal State Northridge, have taken the leadership positions in Mecha, and you can just note who's Mecha chair, who was Mecha chair last semester, the semester before. So women have really stepped forward, and I can't quite explain why, but that definitely is different because Mecha chairs were men, except for one. When I was at Cal State LA, majority were men. Some of them were older than some of the women. A few years makes a difference when you're young. Mm-hmm. Some had been to the service and in Vietnam, so they had a little more experience, a little more worldly, I think, than some of the women. But yes, sexism existed then and as it exists now, but people spoke out against it.
Okay. And then how did you deal with it personally at that time?
What is kind of interesting is that we felt that as long as we were able to be active participants, you know, that we were part of MECHA and that our voices were heard. But I think many of us were not of the mind to take, you know, the leadership positions. Within our group, I think sexism occurred at the individual level, you know, in terms of personal relationships, as it does now. So there's sexism, you know, in interpersonal relationships that existed then and exist now. I would say that on our radar, it was more issues of racism, classism. Homophobia was not even discussed. I mean, that was something that was just kind of part of the landscape.
Okay. My next question: what were some of the tactics machistas used to recruit people to join the organization? Was it difficult, or were the youth more involved in politics during that time?
I think at that time what was really key was that we had some programs that worked closely with MECHA. So, for example, I worked as an advisor for EOP students, and I was a college advisor and a peer mentor. And so there was a kind of good working relationship between MECHA, EOP. We didn't have a Chicano studies department at that time. And I would say that the recruitment occurred through, you have to think of that time, anti-Vietnam war was going on, the Chicano moratorium was going on, so there was a lot of community activity. So we recruited from those community activities, and there was a lot of activism. Yes, there was a height of activism in the 60s and 70s, and you can see from some of the documentation, Storm at Valley State, unrest, and you can see more of the history and documentation of that time.
And then as a woman, what was your role in MECHA?
I was a machista, and I was active in organizing, you know, some of the activities. So I headed up a committee on the EOP camp-in. So we actually took tents and people camped in overnight on the Cal State LA grounds because there were threats to EOP. And so that was, you know, my kind of initiation into MECHA. And after that, it was participating in the Chicano moratorium marches and getting people out to the various protests against police brutality and the other issues that faced us then and face us now.
Okay. And then my last two questions. Being part of MECHA, what has been an accomplishment for you?
I think being a part of MECHA changed my life because MECHA changed my life in regard to my political consciousness, in regard to very instrumental things. So I would say the social networks that I made and the friendships that I made, which were based on shared political ideas, continue today. So I still have friends who are activists now and were activists then, and from Cal State LA. The director of EOP he just retired from Cal State LA, David Sandoval, but he was a machista when I was a machista, and many other of my friends who were active then are still friends, and we still share political sentiments, and we still call on each other to help each other out on whatever our particular concerns are.
And then my last question, what was the most important or meaningful event you've experienced through the MECHA group?
Very many, but I think the Chicano moratorium, which was the marches in East LA against the war in Vietnam, and those are massive marches until the marches against unfair immigration policies took place in 2006. Those marches that took place in East LA in 1970 and 71 were really the largest that had taken place in East Los Angeles. So I think those were really among the most memorable, because although they turned, you know, there was violence, there was police violence, it was really an important learning experience for me.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me. I don't know
Okay,
if you
good.
Thank you.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Good luck with it. But you should